Welcome back to our lesson of PHP. In this lesson, we are going to learn about data types. So when you are working with PHP, there is going to be a lot of information, a lot of data. And obviously there is different types of data whenever you're using. Just like this one, like we used variables. In the previous one, we used HTML. Then we also used the codes of, normal PHP and how it works on the HTML body and all these, okay? So all of these are different type of data. So here, I'm also going to be showing you how you'll be able to use different type of data types in PHP. And as this is the basic course of PHP, I'm going to keep it to be supple and very normal and very flexible as possible. So first I'm going to do is cut all of these up because I'm not going to need any of these anymore. So I'm going to cut these. Okay. I'm going to delete them. So the first thing we're going to learn about is going to be the string. Okay, so just like we use in HTML that there are a couple of tags and then we end it at the end by making it into a structure. So in PHP, it's kind of like the same thing and it's called a string. And you can use different type of data and different type of command to make up that structure in PHP and also our web browser. So that is called a string. Okay, so first off I'm gonna do is open up my PHP command first. If you don't have it, then open it up like typing in this open PHP and closing PHP and type in your content in between them. First off I'm gonna do is start using our variable, which is going to be phrase. So let's start off by using phrase. Okay, I'm gonna type in this and I'm gonna type in phrase. You can see we have our phrase, okay, over here. And here, obviously, you're gonna make a space. And then, obviously, just like you used in PHP, that it needs a double quotation and also at the end a semicolon to end it. So here, I'm gonna type in this is the lesson of data types. Okay. Now, at the end, I'm gonna do is close it with a semicolon. And obviously it will be appearing on my web browser. Obviously when I refresh it, it's still not going to work until I debug it or run it. So here I'm going to do is type in another one. Let's say I'm going to do is the age, okay, which I put over here. And I'm going to do is space, double quotation. And here you can use, like in age, when you're using a number, it's totally fine if you even are like not using double quotation, because numbers are variables and also changeable, so that it doesn't matter. So I'm gonna here type in, let's say 40. I'm gonna put in a colon, okay, semicolon. But if you want to use a negative number, you can also use that too. If you don't use a negative, then obviously it's going to be positive. Okay, so here I'm gonna do is put in positive, because if you are using negative numbers, obviously it's going to turn into decimals. Make sure to keep that space in between the commands, because if you are not putting that, you will face some couple of errors. And make sure to keep your server on most of the times. If you are still like not working on it, then obviously open up your CMD, type in the command of PHP as localhost 4000 and keep it working like in your background. Here I'm gonna do is type in, let's say I'm gonna make let's say a chart type of thingy. So I'm gonna do is open up this and I'm gonna type in GPA this time. So here equal, and here I'm gonna do is going to be 554 point or like 5.65 or like 53, whichever one you're using. If you don't want to use like double quotation, that's like totally up to you. But if you don't want, like you want to use it, you can also keep it. And make sure to see both of it if it still works. If it's like not working, then put in your double quotation. So next time I'm gonna do is going to be putting up another variable. So I'm gonna do is male. So I'm gonna do is type in if it's male or female, you can use it. And obviously PHP works, or the variable works in such a case that if it's true or if it's false. So it's going to be 0 or 1, just like we use or see in ICT or about the codes, how it works. So I'm going to do is type in false. You can see false. That means it's 0. So I'm going to close off like with double semicolon. And here at the end, I'm going to do is type in null. now we have is null. That means it's kind of like at the end, but you can use it for various purposes too. And if you are using those variables on a paragraph now, then you are going to type in echo. So if you are not like using null at the end, so I'm going to do is type in echo, and you can use in your variables. Let's say I'm going to use the first one, which is going to be phrase, which is going to be, this is the lesson of data type. You can see phrase has been like appeared over here. Hit on enter, and I'm going to use my other data types. Okay, so I'm going to do is close it off, echo, and then I'm going to type in echo again, and here I'm going to do is type in my, you know, like variables. Let's say I'm going to type in age. You can see age has appeared up. Close it with a semicolon. I'm going to type in echo again, and if it's still not working, what you're going to do is like type in your content or type in a BR tag, which is going to be of HTML. But if you're using HTML, then make sure to use double quotation, because if you're not using it, it's not going to work. So here I typed in GPA. I'm going to type in GPA over here, close it with a semicolon, and type in echo again. Let's say type in echo. I'm going to do is using my variable again. Now let's say is male. Okay, now we have is male. Let's see if it works. So I'm going to do is run it. Start with run without debugging. Press on yes. Refresh it. And you can see the syntax error has appeared up because there are a couple of things which we did as a mistake. So here I'm going to do is first off close it. And yet let's see how it works. If it's still not working, then you have to put in double quotation on each and every one of those. And yet you can see that these are the data types which are being used over here. And what you're going to do is obviously use them step by step. So here you can put in double quotation like this, double quotation. Then after you're done with double quotation, then you can like start typing in those contents, or like start typing in whatever content you want to use. And if it's still not working, then make sure to like see the and follow all of the steps which I'm doing, and only then you'll be able to get that. And I'm going to do is close off the PHP. So here I'm going to do is question and close it off. I'm going to do is run it without debugging, and let's see if it still works. If it's not working, then you can see this is lesson of this is the lesson of data types 405.53. And then if it's false or true, so if it's false, then it's 0, that means there's no data, and if it's true, then it's going to put in some data if possible. Okay, so now you know about the basics of data types, which are going to be such as phrase, then we have is age, GPA, male, and all of those all together. So these are the data types. Now we are going to start working with strings. So if you want to start working with strings, or like start working with let's say string or like a structure, then let's say I'm going to do over here is first off I'm going to keep it. Okay, I'm going to keep it, but here I'm going to type in my echo. So here I'm going to type in echo, and here I'm going to open up my double quotation. This I'm going to say is this. Okay, I'm going to type in like welcome, and after I type in welcome, I'm going to put in this. And here I'm going to do is put the string of, let's say, phrase. So here I'm going to do is double quotation, or like, you know, I'm going to do is type in phrase. Well, there are a couple of functions which you can use in these two. I'm going to close it off. But first I'm going to do is close off with a BR tag. Now here I'm gonna do is put another one. You can see the phrase, or like, you know, the structure is being used. And if I want to use like something else like a function, so I'm gonna do is type in echo. Here I'm gonna do the same thing, open up the double tag or the double quotation, but before that I'm gonna do is type in string, okay, which is going to be str. You can see str is over here, and if you want to type in str, you can also type in str tuple. So start tuple strt, which is going to be like this, strt outper, and then you're going to type in your content. But if you are using that, I'm going to suggest you to use the bracket, because that is how it works. strt, then here I'm going to put in my bracket, and as I've put in my bracket, now you can see the string. the input string is over here. I'm going to open up this, and here I'm going to type in dog or like cat, whichever one you're using. And after that, close it off with a semicolon. Or you can also use like a phrase, or like use, let's say I'm going to put in my age. Okay, so here I'm going to close a double quotation. But first off, I'm going to do is close this off. Here I'm going to type in this, obviously a variable. Well, let's say here I'm going to use age. Okay, as I've used age, now I can use also str over here. You can use tupin, but also use just str. That will also work. You can also type in strlen. That will also remain as a string. Strlen, it is also still a string. Okay, so that is how the strings actually work. Now here you can also use another one. Let's say I'm going to type in, but first off, let's just run it and see if it actually works. Run without debugging. I'm going to open up my web browser, refresh it. Now you can see, welcome, this is a lesson of data types, and we have is2. Okay, so I'm going to open up my Visual Browser or my Visual Studio Code. Here I'm going to use another step of this. Okay, so I'm going to cut it off, and instead of strlen, I'm going to use the first things first over here. Is going to be using my extension or using my variable. So I'm going to type in echo, and right after echo, I'm going to type in my variable. Let's say I'm going to type in, let's say, phrase. Now, as I've typed in phrase, now I'm going to do is open up my bracket, but not the first or the third bracket. Here you have to use the second bracket, which is going to be this one. Okay, so let's say here I have my phrase, and I'm going to type in 0. So after I typed in 0, I'm going to close it off my semicolon. So I'm going to do is going to be opening up on my web browser and see if it works. Let's say I'm going to open it up, run without debugging. Yes, refresh it. Now you can see that I have T. Okay, so this is how it mainly actually works. You can use these numbers to change up your alphabet and all of those. So I'm going to run it without debugging again. Without debugging, press on yes, refresh it. Now you can see this is now changing. So that is how it basically works in your web browser, and also how it works on your codes and commands. Here, let's say I'm going to type in another code over here. Here I'm going to do is type in 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, or like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here, as this is a string, so I'm going to run it without debugging, press on yes. I'm going to refresh it. I can see that I have a syntax error. So as I have a syntax error, now I'm going to use the same thing over here on Visual Studio Code, but inside of this bracket. So I'm going to do is type in 3 and see if it works. Run without debugging. And before that, I'm going to do is close off this. And I'm going to refresh it. And if it's still not showing, then I'm going to do is go over to Visual Studio Code. And I'm going to do is run without debugging again. Yes. And refresh it. Now you can see that this is S. Okay, now let's say I'm gonna like dedicate one. Okay, so here as I have my first one over here, okay, which is going to be the phrase, and here as I have typed in 0 before, now here I'm gonna do the same thing down over here. So I'm gonna type in echo. Now as I've typed in echo, I'm gonna do is type in this. Now I'm gonna do is type in my content, which is going to be let's say phrase. Now here in phrase, I'm gonna do is open up my second bracket. Here I'm gonna type in 0 if possible, but if you don't want to use that, well, let's say I'm gonna use 0. But first I'm gonna put in 0, and here I'm gonna dedicate that just like I told you. So I'm gonna open it up, equal double quotation, and then I'm gonna type in B. Now I'm gonna do is going to be 0, and what you will see is that I'm gonna close it off again, and here you will see I'm gonna run it without debugging. Without debugging, press on yes, and you will see that this will change. You can see that I have 2B, and that is how it basically works. Okay, and why it works is totally different. So here I'm gonna do is close it off and make some changes over here, because this is not how it's supposed to be. First I'm gonna do is over here on phrase, I'm gonna cut it off. Let's say I'm not gonna use this and use a name instead. Let's say I'm gonna type in orange. Now as I've typed in orange, I'm not gonna keep it like this too. So here I'm gonna cut this off. or we can use the phrase only. So I'm gonna cut this one off. Okay, not echo, just the phrase. Now here I'm gonna do is phrase is equal to, let's say, orange. Now as we have phrase equal orange, so I'm gonna open it up and make some spaces over here, make a line space if I want to, but if I don't want to, I'm gonna cut it off. I'm gonna close this and see if it works. Now I'm gonna do is going to be using echo at the end, so I'm gonna remove this one too, but I'm gonna keep the phrase at like down over here and use the 0 as a B. So what happens is that 0 is 0, like O is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what happens over here is that I'm gonna show it to you again. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So these are the alphabets and these are the codes which I'm going to putting in for like phrases and also echo. Okay, so I'm gonna do the same thing over here, and at the last I have echo, which is going to be phrase, and 0. So here I'm gonna do is open without debugging or run without debugging, press on yes. I'm gonna start on, and you can see that I have only B over here. Okay, so as I already have B, so I'm gonna close it off. We can see phrase is 0, as I don't have it like over here, so I'm gonna cut this off first. So as I have my phrase to be 0, so I'm gonna open it up again. I'm gonna do is run without debugging, press on yes, open up your web browser, refresh it. You will still see that this is still like B. So I'm gonna open up my Visual Studio Code again. Now as I've put in that content, make sure to remove the 0 from over here so that you can get your whole, like, you know, the whole text of orange, but you're gonna get is as orange. Okay, so I'm gonna open it up, run without debugging again, press on. Now you can see it's branch. Okay, not orange but branch. Okay, so this is how it actually works when you are working with strings. Okay, so let's say here I'm gonna type in 1, and it's going to turn this one now, okay, which is going to be R. So I'm going to run without debugging again, press on yes. Now you can see orange. Okay, now the R has changed. Now let's see how the other one works. So I'm going to do is type in 2, and I want, if it's 2, so if it's O like is 0, 1, and this is 2, so let's say ORE. Let's type in E over here and run it without debugging. Now you will see that A will turn into E. Now you can see orange. So this is how the strings actually work in PHP and how you will be able to make changes by using those steps. So thank you for watching this video, and hope you understood everything about the strings and how you will be able to use or start working with strings in PHP and also coding. So let's move on to the next lesson.